we were always hustling. My brothers and I, we were all at bike parts and, selling stuff and reselling stuff and buying stuff. And, and so that's always been, I tell the story of my brother, Michael. We had a lemonade stand. We ran out of lemonade. He started to like water it down and we were losing customers, but it's like, we're still selling lemonade. It's like, that was, that's kind of how we were very resourceful that way. We just, thinking on our feet. And I think that, once I turned like 30, I could see where it was going. I got out of high school and I went in the Navy.
Did you grow up around here?
I grew up in New Brighton.
Nice.
Yeah, so I grew up in New Brighton, and I when I graduated high school, I tell people I graduated in the bottom 2% that makes the other 98% possible. So I don't think that they gave me a diploma. I think they gave me a leaving certificate. Like, thank you, don't come back. And so, and my student council said, you should probably just join the military because no one's going to take you. I was like, all right. So I went in the Navy and I hated it.
Wait, can I pause you real quick?
Yeah.
Why? What do you think caused that 2%? Why was it?
Just the way I learn, the way I study, the way I catch on to things. I am not a classroom, sit down, do your homework, read this chapter. We're going to take this test. No, it's like, Patrick, we're going to rip apart a motor. Watch this, and watch what happens. I'm a very hands-on learner. I want to watch you and observe you, and I think that's kind of how I've been able to wing it. Because I just kind of success leaves clues. You just watch. You watch. Just follow the breadcrumbs. And see where it's going. When I was in the Navy, I didn't really necessarily care for it. But now that I'm out of the Navy and here I am in business, almost 20 years, that little stint that I did in the Navy over in the Gulf has paid spades to myself and my company, because we're certified as a veteran-owned business with the state, and we're bidding on procurement work. And now I'm in the process of getting the company certified federal certification so we can start bidding on federal projects as well. So the business is really changing from a residential contractor to more of a government commercial type business, and probably like maybe half of our business now is residential. So
I want to rewind it. So you got out of the Navy, not a lot of success by standard measuring system in high school. How were you in the Navy? Did that instill discipline, or did that how was that experience?
Well, that's the thing, is you don't really know what you don't. Steve Jobs says it best. You can't look forward and connect the dots. You can only look back, and then it all makes sense. And I think that when I look at being in the Navy in the 90s, I was surrounded by just true leaders and men that just were amazing. And that, and I could sum up my whole entire Navy, my time in the Navy is simply, we practiced every single day for something that never happened. And it was just repetitive, and you look back and you think about that, and then you see like these firefighters out in California and how they're able to fight these fires, or how they're fighting these fires. It's like, everything just goes away and your training picks up. Like a police officer in a very gnarly situation, it's like, how was he able to do that, or think that way, or move that fast? It's like, that's training that picks up. You don't just, it's not instinctive, it's training. And so what I learned in the Navy was order and procedure and sequence. Everything had a sequence, everything had a pattern to it. And so I would say that's the discipline that I learned there, was you're going to do the same thing every day, and no matter if you want to do it or not, we're going to do it. And so that still rings true with me today. Just doing things that don't. Show me their first 60 minutes of your morning, I'll tell you how your day is going. No one's going to know, but over time you're going to find out that you're not doing what you should be doing to be successful, personal, so, and so that's one of the things I learned too, is just I mean, I'm still exercising every day. I mean, I just, staying, in shape, staying fit, reading, journaling, those are things that I was doing back then, because that's what they were telling us to do. You got to stay sharp. You got to stay, you got to exercise this thing, reading is to the mind what weightlifting is to the body. You got to do them both, and so, that was good. I think it was important that, that I was able to remember that, or pick up on that, or still have it with me today.
So you get out, you start doing the sales thing. Do you go right into sales? Is that?
I started in a warehouse that sells siding.
Okay.
And then I went to work for distribution.
Okay.
And so through that, then I went to work with manufacturers. So my last job was with a major vinyl siding manufacturer.
Nice.
And so I would sell to distributors.
Okay.
And so I was really good at the job, but I could see that I wasn't going to get anywhere.
I want to dive in, or zoom in on that part with sales. What you learn in that? You said you're really good at the job. I had a feeling you're really good at the job, and that kind of gave you the confidence, I'm sure, to go out on your own. But what did you do differently that maybe the other reps didn't do?
Well, again, I'll go back to my training. Brian Tracy single-handedly changed my life. Brian Tracy, do it now, do it now, do it now, do it now, do it now. You just tell yourself that all day long. Do it now. Why are we waiting for tomorrow? Do it now. And I think that part of it is, and then the training with the follow-up and the follow-through with customers and clients is important. So I did not have the answer. I still don't. But if you ask me, I'm going to find the answer to you, and I'm going to follow up, whether it's, good information or bad information or no information. I'm going to follow up with you. And I think that's the biggest thing that's missing today in even business to business and business to retail selling, is the follow up and the follow through. I mean, we talk to customers every day that say, well, I've called 3 companies and you're the only one that called me back. Like, what? You kidding me?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's happening. It's still happening. And it's just like, then people are so quick to text and email, and I'm a Gen X, man. I'm gonna call you on the phone. I'm gonna knock on your door, and because that's how we did it, and that's how I'm still doing it. So I think that's the other part that I think that helped myself become successful. Again, just following other people that were successful. I went into the office. I found the guy that was selling the most material. I just sat him down and said, let's go to lunch. How are you doing this? Mm-hmm. I mean, people that are successful will tell you, they'll help you. The people that aren't, they're going to just, you're never going to make it, or whatever, they're going to tell you something. So that's the one thing I've learned, is that, it's who you surround yourself with too, even in the office, even at home. Show me your friends. They'll show you your future. It's really universal. So, the success in sales, if I had to narrow it down, it would be, there was like a no fear of cold calling. I mean, you could swear at me, scream at me, throw shit at me. Didn't matter. Didn't matter. I was numb to it. I had done so much cold calling that it didn't matter what you said. So I was not afraid to walk into a business. I walked into businesses sometimes, and I'm going to shut this thing off. I walked into businesses sometimes, and there was a big sign on the door. It said, no solicitations.
Yeah.
I'd walk in, and the gatekeeper would say, did you see the sign on the door? I said, yes, but that's not for me, because I actually sell what you guys need. I ain't selling pencils. I said, I need to talk to the production manager. I need to talk to the owner. I have this siding, I have this roofing, I have this company I work for. We can help you guys. And so that's kind of a lot of times how I'd get in the door. I just
so that worked.
Bold. It does. I don't know how. You better have a compelling product that's going to help their business. To walk into a business that that doesn't take solicitors.
What's your mindset going into that? Is it I'm like, what's the win? Is it just give me the name and number of the decision maker, get on the calendar? Are you trying to like one call close them? What do you?
My thought was, and that's a good question. So when I would walk into those situations, my main purpose is to sell the next appointment. I don't want to sell too much of the product, and I don't want to give out too much of what it is. I just want to get the next appointment. I need to get back in here on more friendly terms, So it's like I leave you enough to get you to say yes, but I don't tell you everything. Like there's no pricing. I don't want to talk about pricing. I want to talk about, the value, the product, the quality, how it can, work within with what you're doing. And you wouldn't know that unless you do some research on the company. So you got to know a little bit about the company you're calling on too when you make these cold calls. Like know the owner's name and know what they sell. Who are they buying from? These are very important things that, when you walk in blind, you should probably know what you're selling up against, and what you're up against. So, that was.
So you hook them, you create a little curiosity, and then you try to close them on a book a meeting.
Yeah, and it's a slow burn. So it's business to business. So it'd be you can get that first order, and depending on how that goes, and how you follow up, and whether there's returns or no returns, there's so many things that factor into trying to build that relationship with that new customer. And so for me, it was the follow-up and the follow-through, and just constantly just, how's it going? What's happening? And we still do that today. I mean, we call our customers. I was just telling one of the guys earlier, we sold a Java storefront for a customer, and I thought I was losing it, and I called them up and I just said, hey, I just want to let you know, I sent you an email. This is what the color of the door is going to look like. I don't know if I don't remember if you got that or not. They're like, yeah, we got it. You see it, but I talked to them. Mm-hmm. See, that's the thing. I'm thinking of you. I'm and I think that's the thing. Sometimes you just gotta have something ridiculous to call them up and talk to them about, just to get your foot back in the door, because it's that penetration is what's going to get it done.
So always have a little something you want to talk to them about, rather than just, hey, just checking in, or do you think a hey, just checking in is okay?
And hey, just checking in is okay, but you better have a purpose, or you're just a professional visitor. I mean, are we professional salespeople, or what are we doing this for? Is this a hobby, or are we trying to make some money? And so that's where I look at it is I got to have something to leave you, and I got to have something to give you. And I'm going to give you this, and then I want something from you. And that something from you might be just a phone call back or a response, and so there's that give and take, and that's how you build those relationships.
What's the sign to stop following up? Because I feel like there's a balance between follow up and then following up too much and being desperate. Like you still want to maintain your sense of authority and kind of power, right?
Yeah. So again, you have to have something to give. I mean, after a while, you've followed up 3 times and they still haven't given you an answer, and they haven't given you a yes, but they haven't given you a no. You have to have something to give them, So, you could make stuff up if you have to, or just call your manufacturer and say, hey, I got this job. I want to sell it. Can you give me anything? Yeah, I'll give you this. Money off, an incentive. You buy this, we'll give you extra of this. Then you call the customer up and you say, look, I just talked to the manufacturer about this product that I showed you, and I can give you a swinging deal. This is coming from the manufacturer, not from me, and I can lower your price. Sometimes what I found is that there's people in this world that are professional buyers, and they pride themselves in how they purchase things, whether it's a car, a flea market, or whatever. They want the discount, and it doesn't matter what it is. And as long as they know that they've gotten a better price than what I first presented, or they feel like they've done their best to get the best price, sometimes that's what it is. But we found too is that sometimes the reason why people aren't buying is it's sometimes it's just very, very simple, or just basic block and tackle selling is what didn't get it done. I've sat into a home where, I gave too much emphasis, or I gave too much time and attention to the husband talking about the project that they wanted to do. And what I didn't realize is the decision maker was sitting right next to him, and I just ignored her. I didn't get the deal,
Yeah.
and she's the one that told me, you ignored me. I'm like, damn, but that's what success looks like. That's what it looks. It's a series, just falling over and failing and being able to learn from your mistakes, so, that's what I've discovered,
So you see the opportunity to earn more when you go out on your own, take a little bit more of the risk, but you get more reward. Talk to me about those early days, that inflection point. Was it all just smooth sailing once you decided?
Dude, it'll bring me to tears. Literally bring me to tears. I mean, 2007, 2008, crashed, bang, boom. I had 4 rental properties. I'm working this construction company. I'm working out of the basement of my home. It was the darkest moments of my life. And I mean, I'm staying sober. I'm not drinking. I mean, I got credit cards maxed. I got suppliers that will not give me material because I'm over my credit limit. I'm behind in my bills. About the only bill that I'd pay consistently is my health club bill. Like, I gotta work out. Like, this is the only thing that's gonna save my life right now, because I gotta just get on a racquetball court, or I gotta go pump iron, because it's the only thing I can do to just keep my head, My youngest daughter, Vanessa, was very sick. She was in the hospital. Horrible. And I don't even know how I made it, because it's like, we're sitting in Children's Hospital, and my daughter had open heart surgery, and she's just hooked up to all this equipment. And my phone rings, and the customer says, hey, Patrick, I got your number from such and such, and you did windows for him, and you did a really good job, and we want you to come and look at our house for windows. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And I said, what city are you? And she said, well, we're in Vadnais Heights. And I said, well, I'm not that far away. I said, and I have the samples with me. Can I swing by later today and show you that? And what time? And we set up an appointment right there. I got their address and their name and their phone number. And I'll never forget, I hung up the phone, and my wife just looked at me. She's staring at me, and I was staring at her. And my daughter's sitting there. And I just never forget. I just looked at her. I said, I got to go. And when you got to make a sale like that, you're going to make that sale. You're going to make that sale because everything is on the line, and there's no turning back. And basically, if I don't make the sale, I'm out of business. If I do make the sale, I get another I get another week to stay in business, maybe. You know what I mean?
Wow.
I was taking the down payment and paying back old debt. I wasn't even buying the windows for the house. It was a shit show, and how I was running my business, because I had no formal education on how to run a business. I didn't even know what a P&L looked like. How much money was in my checkbook? Well, I'm running low. How much money is on my credit card? Well, I got to do something there. It was just, that's how I ran my business. And I don't even know how I made it through prayer, faith. But when you get to a point where there's no going back, like literally, like there was nowhere to turn. We were in the middle of a major recession. I mean, even if I folded up my business, what was I going to do? Go find a job? No one was hiring for the type of work that I was doing. And so it's that kind of grit and that kind of faith in yourself and your family and your ability to, to pull you through. And I think that sometimes that's what it takes to, is that commitment to what you're doing, no matter what. I'm not turning around. I'm not going back on this. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. That was kind of my thoughts.
Damn.
You know, it was powerful, man.
That's powerful.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So after,
I don't tell that story a lot. Here we are on a podcast.
well, that's powerful, man. Because, oh man.
Yeah, where do you end there? Where do you go from there, right? I mean,
Well, is that the inflection point that now do you get your shit together after that like moment, or is it is there still like how do you go from, you know, kind of running it, shooting from the hip to how we're sitting here today?
the turning point for me was when I started to seek outside help, when I started to hire people that were smarter than me, paying them more money than me. I mean, there was times where I was paying people more money than I was making. And I mean, I look at my roll-off business. I started the roll-off business 5 years ago. I still haven't collected a check from the roll-off business. I mean, every bit of money that I make for dumpsters goes right back into the company. I don't take a paycheck. I have 3 drivers. I pay them. I make the payments on the trucks. And I know that there's something there. It's a great business, and I know that it's going to be, it's successful, and I know it's going to continue to be successful. And as soon as those trucks are paid off, I'm going to have an ATM machine in my back pocket, you know? And so I think that you have to, there's a sacrifice there that you have to make in order to be successful. You know, when you look at these companies that are super successful and all of a sudden they're just gone, and you look and you say, what happened? You know, and it's a lot of times it comes down to, it's the mismanagement of the business owner raping the checkbook or not paying his people, not paying his subcontractors, not paying their suppliers, you know, and, you know, they're flying around the country, driving brand new trucks, cabin on Gull Lake. It's like, dude, what are you doing? You know? And I think that that's, again, looking at what people are doing wrong is what's helped me too. I don't own a cabin. I don't want one. You know, I mean, this year I'm not going on vacation because one of my drivers can't work nights, and we haul snow down at the convention center for snow days. So they like these roll-off trucks. So I'm in a truck driving in the middle of the night with the guys hauling snow out of the convention center. So I can't go on vacation because the minute I go on vacation, it's going to snow, you know, so.
You know, what's powerful, I think, with that, going back to that story, I want to learn a little bit more about is how you've been able to balance family and business. I have a daughter on the way in 6 weeks. I've been thinking about it more.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's awesome.
I feel that weight and responsibility. And, I mean, in an idealistic world, it's, you know, you want to do everything you can to be there and be a family man, but you also, I feel the weight of being a provider. What have you learned about being good at both?
I tell you what, I think that, man, you got to be present. You got to be present. You got to be, when you're at home, and you're a business owner, you're always thinking about it. Your phone's ringing or whatever, but you got to be present. You know, you got to know that, you know, I'm at home and making yourself available, and carving out time with your family is the other thing too. Is, you know, scheduling that time. You know, it's like, well, when we got time, we'll go do this. It's like, no, you ain't gonna have time. You know, it's like, no, on Friday at 5:00, this is what we're doing. Well, that's a lot different than, well, it's one of these weekends we'll do this, you know. So I think that's the other thing is carving out that time and scheduling that time is very important. And I think that, you know, I've been very blessed. I mean, my wife has become more and more involved in the business more and more. And, you know, we work together, we live together, we're best friends, we're married. And, you know, it's difficult, but we've managed to separate the two, you know. A lot of people look at me and say, how do you work with your wife? I'm like, we just do it, you know, it's not a big deal. So it's a little weird dynamic that way, when you get two people married that are working in the same company. It's a little different. So, but I mean, I stay in my lane. Everything's fine.
Yeah. I want to know about goal setting and pacing.
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 Yeah.
Goal setting and pacing.
That's my language.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love it. My whole life is just one consecutive goal after another.
How do you think about that? Do you think like one giant vision, like when you think Gary Vee wants to own the Jets, or is it a checkpoint that you're focusing on the next 3 months? This is what I want to accomplish. Like, how do you think? What drives you, or what inspires you?
Well, I think that you got to have the big, hairy, audacious goal. You got to have that out there, and because you got to have something to aim at. Okay. With that being said, how do you break that thing down into smaller pieces and more manageable pieces where you can get to it and you can look at it on a monthly, weekly, daily basis, because what you're doing right now today, it doesn't seem like it matters. Like you're, I got to do this and I got to do that. I got to make sure this is done. And if you didn't do it, no one's going to say anything, and it really isn't going to change your life. But what goal setting really comes down to is this: it's so boring. It's just so monotonous. It's just like you're just doing the same thing every day, and you're just trying to go for it, and you're not making any headway, and you're not making any gains. It seems like you're going backwards, but you just keep pushing that chain up the hill because you know that this is the way that you have to find that thing or accomplish that thing, and it's hard. And it's not glamorous, and it sometimes it's even ugly, but I think that with goal setting, what I've learned from Brian Tracy, I write down my goals every day. Every day. So every day, I think that's where it starts, is like, what I'm doing, the minute I wake up and then go. But, so I think that writing down my goals, I write down my top 6 goals every day, and then I journal, like a gratitude journal, an intention journal. And I think that it has to be on your head. Those things never go into autopilot. You know what goes into autopilot? Negativity and just bad attitudes. It's effortless. You don't have to do anything. You just end up there. To be positive, enthusiastic, and loving, and just living in a state of gratitude, you have to tell yourself that every day, and you got to write it down. Why? And I think that's the thing that I've learned with goal setting, is that it's an everyday event. You're writing it down and you're reminding yourself, and then what? I read the book with Simon Sinek. You start with why. What is the why? What is this thing? Where is it going? What is the why? And I just with the company, I love seeing us gain traction, growing, and then surrounding ourselves with talented people and just working with positive people. It's awesome. I mean, I've always said it, even when I was working in a big, sales bin, full of salesmen, it was like, I always felt like I was in competition with these guys. They were always like, they wouldn't share, or they would share, and I always said, man, I just want to work where I don't feel like I'm in competition with the guy next to me. I just want to work somewhere where, people are willing to share and help and be responsive to, other people. And I think we've done that here. We're working on it. It's always in process. But
I want to get granular about how you write your goals down. Do you do it as if you already have it? Do you do it as I want this? Do you do it from the future looking backwards? Like what seems to be?
I think that's another good question because, when you look at, so I study like a Neville Goddard. So I read some of his material and some of the things he talks about, it just makes sense. So if you say, I don't want this to happen because this would be really bad. And you start thinking about this thing that you don't want to happen that's really bad. And no one would agree that this should happen. But you think about that. So what happens is that you start to, the thing that you don't want to happen all of a sudden starts happening because that's what's on your mind. And so trying to eliminate the negativity and trying to eliminate the things that you don't want to have happen, and you start to think about the things that you do want to have happen, that's where it starts. And so what Neville would talk about is with your goal is that, like I look at that roll-off business, and my son was with me. He was still in high school, and I was talking about this roll-off business. We're going to start this roll-off business. And people were like, roll-off? What are you doing? It's like, just leave me alone. And we drove to Ream Kenworth because I wanted to go look at a truck.
Mm-hmm.
And we got out, and one of the sales guys was out in front, and he said, hey, what's going on? I said, we want to look at this truck. He goes, jump in it. And I jump in the truck, and I had to feel what that felt like. So it's a feeling. So it's a feeling of the wish fulfilled. It's, like if you want to own that Kenworth truck driving down the road, then you have to go to Kenworth and go sit in it. I always wanted a Porsche 911 Turbo. Well, you got to get in the car and sit into it. Touch the gear shift, whatever it is. I mean, it was a goal, but you have to envision yourself doing that thing that you want to do, and you have to envision yourself as if it's already happened, because it's a feeling. It's not out here. It's in here. It's in here. And so the feeling is if you can't imagine yourself driving that dream car that you want, or living in that dream house that you want to live in, if you can't sit back, close your eyes, and just imagine that, how is it going to feel when it really does happen? Because it's never going to happen. So it's like it's almost like you envision it and you feel it first, and then you start to move towards that, because that's what you're thinking, that's what you're feeling. But the goal setting is really, it's in present tense. I am. It's not I will be. Because if you say I will be, you're telling yourself that you're not. So I am. I did, I will, instead of, wishing. And I think that's, you're more direct in what it is that you're looking to do, to yourself, and you're not selling yourself short. So does that make sense?
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's something I've heard that thing about feeling, but what you said for some reason hit differently this time. And it's like, you got to taste it. You just want to taste that goal, get it. And you might not like the taste. So then I just remember I used to want to be a medical device salesman. And then I went and worked at the hospital. I was like, I volunteered there. I was like, oh, I don't want to be a part of this at all. And so like a wishful thinking, it's almost like, I think sometimes I hold on to a goal or a dream as an escapism. And then I don't even know if I really want it or not, but I imagine myself maybe wanting it, and that's good enough. But then you actually go and see if you want it, and then you get clarity on it. And if you do want it, now you got jet fuel behind you. Like, I want that. I want that 911.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, it's tough because, a lot of people, were brought up, and I'm not saying I was brought up totally like this, but there was times where it's like, you have a program running right now that you don't even know, and it's coming from your childhood. What do you think? Money grows on trees?
Right.
We can't afford that. Sit down, shut up. You know what I mean? And it's like, That's stuff you have to deprogram yourself of that. No, there's an abundance of money. I mean, trust me, they print it every friggin' day. It's crazy, and I mean, I don't agree with it, but that's what's happening, and so, and I think that that's the other thing is, in order to be someone that you've never been, you're going to have to develop new skill sets. You're going to have to develop a new way of viewing yourself, looking at yourself, how you feel about yourself, and become that person. And it's really intimidating. I think I've met my future self in a dream, and I was very intimidated by this guy because he was everything I ever wanted to be, and
that's cool.
He was dialed in, man. He didn't take any shit either from me. No excuses, It was like, dude, what are you doing? And I think that that's another powerful exercise is to, envision the best version of yourself, just flying high, just knocking on all cylinders, just moving and shaking and going. What does he look like? Yeah. And I mean, it gets a little intimidating at times, because at that point you can't, you can't, I mean, you can't lower the standard, because you want the best for yourself and your family and your company. And, that's going to take a lot more of you. And what does that look like? And so I think that that's another thing that's helped guide me as well, is just, looking at that vision of the business and what role I play in it, and how do I look within this role. And, I have to develop new habits. I have to eliminate old habits.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to learn new skill sets. Everything is developing daily, and weekly. So it's nonstop, full time.
You mentioned something earlier back in 2008 when you're starting your own thing. You said you're staying sober. What has been your relationship with alcohol?
It's not been good. I started very early. I do believe I was blessed at an early age. When I was in the Navy, I got into a lot of trouble, and the captain of my ship came to me, and I actually got in so much trouble. I had captain's mast on board a ship, which is like a non-judicial court. It's basically me against the captain, and it wasn't good. And they told me that I have a drinking problem and I should go to the Navy base and get help and then come back to the ship. I didn't want to go initially, but my father told me basically, if you don't go, you're not welcome back in my house, which is probably the best thing that anyone ever did for me. It's my dad, telling me, no, you get out of there, you're done. You're not welcome here. Like, great. Where am I supposed to go?
That's tough love.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He knew. So I went to Naval Hospital, and I'm not sure exactly what happened. I had somewhat of a spiritual experience, and I haven't drank in 35 years. I quit drinking when I was 20 years old, and I had drank for 6 years prior, so I started drinking when I was like 14, it was crazy. But I just knew for me to drink is to die. I didn't want to die. So I just very blessed.
At the naval base, you had a spiritual experience?
Yeah, that and the last time I drank, I started drinking on a Friday. I woke up Sunday morning in the Naval Hospital, and the naval doctor came in. And, it's the Navy doctors. There's no bedside manners. I mean, some like this, E1 or E2 or whatever. It's like, dude, you fucked up, But he walked in and he just said, "Were you doing drugs?" I said, "No." He said, "We had to pump your stomach." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm going to tell you something. You need to get help, and if you don't get help, you're going to die a very young man." And he walked out of the room. I was like, "What?" I'll never forget. I got up to go use the restroom, and I walked in and I was going to use the restroom, and I stood in front of the sink and I looked in the mirror, and I didn't like looking in the mirror because I didn't like who I had become, and I didn't like who it wasn't supposed to turn out like this. You know what I mean? It's like, this is not how it was supposed to end, you know? And I didn't like looking at myself, and I looked at myself, and this time it was really kind of funny looking back, because I was in Naval Station Long Beach. So I was out on the beach. So I got super hammered during the day, and I passed out on the beach. So the whole, like, you know, side of my face was sunburn, and the other side was like normal, you know? So I'm like, look at him. What the heck?
Two-Face.
And I just remember I just started to cry. And I just kind of, you know, I had, at the time, it was a version of like the atheist prayer, you know? It was like, God, if there is a God, you know, help me, whatever, you know? And I just remember just a feeling of relief and gratitude had come over me in a way that I had never experienced before as a young man. And I just knew that it was going to be okay. I just needed to stay sober. It was going to be okay. And I just kind of hung on to that, you know, and it was cool. So, but yeah, there was I've had many different opportunities to just say, you know, screw it. Let's just eliminate this, you know, horrible feeling inside and just go have some fun. But
yeah.
I didn't, you know, so.
Man, thanks for sharing that. I think that's going to be really helpful, and I needed that. I think other people need that. I am curious, do you ever feel that like urges or desire, you know, the pull towards it still, or is it kind of something you've overcome? It's just not even an option.
I'm somewhat very health conscious in what I eat and things like that. So, you know, and it's freaking poison. I mean, it's poison. Yeah. I mean, a glass of wine with an Italian meal is probably one thing I probably miss more than anything. I mean, that would be good. Or, you know, I do drink non-alcoholic IPA beer. Nice. You know, so
athletic.
Yeah, exactly. So like that with like a pizza, I mean, that's heaven. You know? And those IPA non-alcoholic beers are they're delish.
They're solid.
Oh man, they're good, and they're expensive.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, like $4 a can.
It's like shouldn't they be cheaper? There's no alcohol in here.
Right. So, but no, I think that you know, that's it's just, you know, I don't really think about it a whole lot, you know, and if I go to a party or whatever, I've always drove separate. You don't go to a party with people. If you're not want to drink, you better drive separate, because you need to exit at any moment. It's like, where do you go? I don't know. You didn't say goodbye. It's like, that's how you leave a party. You don't say goodbye, because they'll reel you back in.
Yeah.
You can't leave. It's like, oh shit, you know?
Yeah.
You just leave, you know?
Well,
where'd he go?
That's good practical tips.
Yeah, right on.
What I've done is I've sometimes just put like an NA or something in a koozie, and then you don't get it.
Yeah, then they don't bother you.
They don't bother you.
Yeah, right.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Hey, as we wrap up here, I'm gonna try a new segment.
Okay.
I'm gonna say this is the kind of the word association. If there's anything that comes to mind, whether it's a story or just thoughts, curious what your gut reaction was or is. Perseverance.
Oh man, that's the word, man. That's crazy that you said that, because when I started my business, I met with my buddy Tom, who's a contractor, and we sat down and I said, give me one piece of advice. I mean, I'm like freshly minted company. I mean, I just got my EIN number, and I mean, the state just acknowledged me as a business. I mean, I haven't even sold a job yet. And I remember we were sitting in a restaurant. I took him out to lunch. And I said, any word of advice for me, Tom? And he just looked at me and he said, perseverance. And I'm like, really? He says, dude, be ready to walk through frickin' open flames, underwater, no oxygen. You keep moving forward. And no matter what, you know, and that was some pretty good advice, because the perseverance, especially when you're running a business, there's so many times to just stop, give up, take a shortcut, don't show up. And I think that's what it comes down to, is perseverance, is to you got to show up, make the phone call, answer the email, meet with the guy that wants to meet with you. That's perseverance. It's every day. It's every week. It's showing up. And sometimes that's hard for people.
What's 2 questions here? What are you most excited about in the larger sense? Maybe not even just your company, but just like for the future of America, of your life, of your family, I don't know, of your company. What are you most excited about?
I'm excited for my kids. My daughter's going to go to college next year in Arizona. My son, Owen, who's going to turn 21 next month, is working for the company. We're grooming him to take over this company, and he does everything. He drives, he works with the crew. We're going to slowly start to get him into the sales process. And, you know, I think that what I've been able to do, or my wife and I, is instill in our kids, you know, a different paradigm of what money is than the paradigm that I was brought up in with money. You know, my son is, you know, he's stacking Bitcoin, and, you know, he's making investments. Yeah. He when he graduated high school, I asked him, I said, where do you want to go to college? And he said, I really don't want to go to college. I said, well, what do you want to do? He says, I want to make $1 million. I said, well, let's not waste any time. We got to learn how to sell. We got to learn how to work, you know, let's do it, you know, because in today, I mean, he's just doing so good, man. And you know, he works out, keeps his nose clean. You know, I'm really proud of him and proud of my daughter Ava, and I'm excited to see where, you know, how they develop as adults in their businesses and their careers, you know, versus the path that I had to take. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited really where we're going to take this company. So I had a capstone presentation that I did, you know, for the SBA, and I did it for my staff here, and it's pretty bold, but our plan is to double our business by the end of 2028. And I have a pretty good plan, and we have certain gates on how to get there, and we're going to be led by the numbers. And so we're working with the software company that we have now, and we're going to have reports for everything. We're going to be guided by the numbers. We're going to have week to week, month to month, month to last month to last year's the same, you know, year to date from last year to date to this year. And we're also going to have numbers that bring us to from 2028 back to this present moment, and it's going to tell us where we need to be in order to be able to achieve these goals. These financial goals. But we want to make more money at the same time. We don't want to just throw a number out and say, oh, we're going to do this much money. No, we want to do it, but we want to hold true to the margin. We want to hold true to how much money we're making. So I'm excited to see where that's going to end up, because I really, you know, it's got to be bold, you know, the goal setting, and I, you know, and so. And it's everything. It's HR. It's the numbers. It's the culture that we're building here. You know, that we work with. It comes down to hiring companies that would consult with us and coach us and work with us in sales and work with us on our presentation. And then it goes into production, and you know. Downstairs is our sales office, and if our sales office has got a conveyor belt that going 15 miles an hour, but our production got a conveyor belt that only goes 5 miles an hour, well, we're going 5 miles an hour. So we have to find the bottleneck within the company. And so I just think that with a goal, it just excites me. With a goal, I jump out of freaking bed. You know, without a goal, you're just going through the motions, man. It doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't. It's depressing, to be honest with you. So, I think that that's the thing I'm most excited for, is to see where we are at the end of 2028. Can we double our business from 2023? Can we do that? And if we don't, that's okay, because we can look back and we can say, okay, what did we learn in the last 3 years? What did we learn in the last, you know, in this time spent trying to double our business? What did we pick up on? You know, what procedures did we learn? What procedures did we drop? What was helpful? What was beneficial? What was bad? And I think that that's what success looks like is it's just a series of failures, and you just keep pushing the wall, and you start to see, where you're screwing up and where you're making gains, and you lean into what's working, and you kind of pull away from what's not working. And because there's some things that we do around here that are really fun, but they don't make us any money. We got to eliminate that. Just because it's easy doesn't mean we should be doing it. Because if it doesn't make any money, forget about it. And I think that's what I've been really looking at. You got to look at the whole business as a whole, and sometimes it gets a little dicey to taking things that you're used to and saying, no, we're not going to do this anymore. So
last question, one for the listeners. You've dropped gems all throughout, but what's that parting word? Maybe it's a challenge, maybe it's a word of wisdom, something from your experience. What's something you want to leave the listeners with?
I'm just regular dude, I say I a lot, and I'm sorry if that annoys people. You probably lost a lot of listeners because of the way I freaking talk, but I would say, just if you got a dream, don't be afraid of it. If you got a vision and it scares you and you quickly don't want to think about it, you need to think about it. If it scares the shit out of you, you lean into it. I'm telling you that the only thing that ever moved the needle is when it was like front row on the roller coaster going into a barrel of flames. Damn. That's where I live, man. I mean, it intimidates people and it scares people, but it's in your head. You got to lean into that. And if it scares you, then that's what you should be looking at. Or at least analyze it. Some things are really scary. Some things are just foolish. So that's what you got to look at. If I do this, here's a piece of paper, pros, cons, what's going to happen good, what's going to happen bad, what's the worst case scenario, what's the best case scenario, and look at it. And there's no roadmap to any of this stuff. It's all flying by the seat of your pants a lot of times. So I would say that would be my parting words, is that one thing that you've always wanted to do but never wanted to do because it's so damn scary, you should probably look at it on paper. Once you get it on paper, it seems to crystallize what was going on up here, and then when you read it, it doesn't look the same as what you were thinking about, and all of a sudden it starts making sense. You're like, yeah, we're going to do this. So look at it and go for it. There's not enough leaders in this world. There's not enough people that are willing to step out and just be made fun of for screwing up. And I think that's where the magic is right there. Awesome. In that spotlight.
Let's go. Patrick Miller, thank you, man.
Hey, man.
Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you so much for
awesome.
inviting me on your show.
Yeah.
Love it.